They sat me by the kitchen. That's where I watched my son get married through a swinging metal door and behind a tray of shrimp cocktail I had paid for. Every flower. Every chair. Every champagne glass, they were mine. But when the music started and the speeches began, I wasn't part of it. Not even close. There was no nameplate for me. No sign. No kind greeting. Just a folding chair shoved behind a cart with a broken wheel that squeaked every time someone pushed it. There, I sat quietly, smiling, pretending I belonged in the shadows. I wore a mauve chiffon dress, hand-stitched, soft. I spent 3 hours on my hair that morning, trying to feel like today was special for me too. I told myself, this is my son's big day. Be gracious. Be invisible if you have to. When I walked in, no one greeted me. Not even Daniel. He was too busy adjusting his cufflinks, laughing with guests, letting her mother kiss him on the cheek like she'd raised him, like she was the one who stayed up during his night terrors, like she was the one who worked double shifts when I had to choose between braces and rent and I chose his smile. I clutched my little beige leather purse he gave it to me for Mother's Day years ago, back when he still called me Mama. Me fingers trembled. Not violently, but like a hum beneath the skin. Like something electric trying to escape through my hands. A boy he couldn't have been older than 20 wearing a catering apron approached awkwardly. They said you were supposed to wait back here. Mom? The bride didn't want, any visual clashes with the theme. I blinked. Theme, he winced, eyes darting toward the door. For the photos and all. Aesthetic consistency. I sat down. The chair creaked. My shoes stuck to something on the tile. Floor, gravy maybe? I stared at my hands. My nails were freshly done. A pale pink that matched the ribbon on the invitations. Then a chipped plate was dropped in front of me. Cold chicken breast. No sides. No apology. Just silence. And the worst part, I didn't say a word. Because I told myself not to ruin this for him. Because I thought that paying for everything still meant something. Because I still believed I mattered in a way that would be seen not just behind a swinging kitchen door. I pulled the program from my handbag, elegant, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. Her father walked her down the aisle. Her mother gave the first toast. My name wasn't mentioned. I was just a line on the budget sheet. A footnote in a day I made possible. The door swung again. Laughter spilled in, followed by the first chords of their dance song. I leaned slightly and saw them, Daniel and Emily, twirling beneath the chandelier. He didn't look my way. Not once. I pressed the napkin to my mouth, pretending to dab away a stain that wasn't there. My eyes burned. I told myself it was the onions from the kitchen steam. The heat. Not the betrayal. But deep down I knew. It was betrayal. And something inside me cracked. Like glass under pressure. It wasn't loud. Just a whisper of a fracture. I stared ahead at a patch of peeling paint behind a fire extinguisher. I focused on it like it was the only real thing left. My anchor. The only thing keeping me from falling apart in front of a waiter carrying crab puffs. Because if I started crying, I wasn't sure I'd ever stop. I sat there, staring at the plate in front of me like it might offer some kind of comfort. It didn't. The chicken was cold. The plate was chipped. Someone had slopped a spoonful of mashed potatoes beside it. And even that looked tired. No one had told me I'd be here. No email. No call. No gentle warning saying, we made other seating arrangements. They just placed me behind the door. Out of view. Out of the frame. Not even Daniel had said a word. I told myself maybe he didn't know. Maybe this was all Emily's doing. Maybe he was too busy. Too overwhelmed. But those were just stories I told myself to make the silence hurt less. The truth was, He knew. He knew exactly where I was sitting. And he let it happen. That was the part I kept choking on. Not the insult. Not the disrespect. But the quiet permission, the way he allowed her mother to play the role I had spent a lifetime earning. Emily's mother gave the first toast. She stood at the center of the glowing hall, draped in navy chiffon and pearls, holding a champagne flute like royalty. Her voice was soft, measured. We're so proud of our daughter, and so honored to welcome Daniel into our family. He's like a second son to us. Second son. She said it like I didn't exist, like Daniel hadn't been born in a storm of fear and exhaustion, under fluorescent lights in a public hospital, while I held his tiny hand and promised him the world. Like I hadn't raised him on single paychecks and prayer. I looked down at my shoes. The floor was sticky. There was a stain, brownish, maybe gravy or coffee right beneath my chair. I shifted slightly, and the soles made a sound like tape peeling from cardboard. It echoed louder than it should have. Still, I said nothing. What would I even say? That I felt like a ghost. That I had poured everything I had into this day. And yet somehow, I had become invisible in the very room I paid to create. The program didn't mention me. The speeches ignored me. The seating chart erased me. Even my own sister didn't come to find me. She sat out there, 2 rows back, sipping wine and smiling for pictures, pretending not to notice I hadn't joined the crowd. Maybe she thought I was helping in the back. Maybe she thought I wanted it this way. Or maybe she just didn't want to make it awkward. That's the thing about being silent for so long. People start to believe it's who you are. I heard a laugh deep, familiar, from across the reception hall. Daniel. He was laughing with Emily's father, her bridesmaids, her cousins. He looked relaxed, handsome, like he belonged, like that room was his world now. And I was some faraway planet he'd outgrown. I remembered that laugh. It used to echo in our tiny apartment on Friday nights when we'd dance around the living room to old Motown records. Back when I'd cook boxed mac and cheese and call it gourmet just to make him smile. That laugh had once been mine. Now it belonged to them. I reached for the water glass on the tray beside me. It was half full. Lukewarm. I sipped it slowly, trying to swallow the knot in my throat. It didn't work. A young server passed by a girl no older than 20. She glanced at my plate, her eyes flickering with discomfort. Do you, need a refill? Or anything? I shook my head. I'm fine. But I wasn't. God. I wasn't. Every inch of me ached, my feet in those awful shoes. My back against the metal chair. My jaw clenched so tightly it made my temples throb. My heart felt like something rotten stuck in my chest. I thought of the seating chart. Weeks ago, I had asked Emily, gently, "Have you figured out where I'll be sitting?" She smiled tight. Bright. Practiced. Don't worry. Margaret. You'll be included. And I believed her. Foolish. Isn't it? To believe inclusion is a gift. Not a right. That was when it hit me like a cold splash of truth down my spine. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mix-up. This was a decision. A deliberate one. They didn't forget me. They placed me. Right here. Out of sight. And suddenly, silence didn't feel noble anymore. It felt like surrender. I waited. I waited until the final toast was made. Until the last bite of cake was served. I waited until the band began to play that upbeat, feel-good track that always comes after the emotional speeches, when people loosen their ties and kick off their heels and pretend everything is perfect. Then I stood up. No one saw me. No one thought to look behind the kitchen door. The music was too loud. The drinks were flowing. The spotlight was too blinding. They never saw the woman who paid for the lights to be on in the first place. I stepped outside into the cold night air. My breath came out in soft clouds. The silence out here buzzed in my ears. Like the world had finally paused long enough for me to hear myself think. And I made 3 calls. Each one was short, polite, professional. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't cry. First, the florist. Please cancel the Sunday brunch delivery. No. There's been a change of plans. Thank you. Second, the band. We won't be needing the second set tomorrow evening. Yes. Just the one performance. Thank you. Third, the bar vendor. Kindly cancel the second bartender shift and cocktail expansion for the brunch. No payment will be processed for the balance. Each call ended the same way with a calm thank you and a quiet click. It was done. I hadn't planned it. I hadn't rehearsed it. But the moment I put my phone down, I felt something unfamiliar rising in me. Something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that comes with raised voices and slammed doors. No. This was different. This was the power of a woman who had finally stopped asking for permission to exist. I walked back to the hotel through the side entrance. No one saw me slip in. My heels clicked against the tile. Echoing through the empty hallway, I pressed the elevator button and waited. Inside my room, the air was stiff. The floral room spray the hotel used made me nauseous. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I sat down at the edge of the bed, still in my dress, staring at the glowing red numbers on the digital clock. It was 2:07 a.m. I didn't check my phone, though it buzzed on the nightstand. I already knew what was there: missed calls, texts, maybe even voice messages. From Daniel, from Emily, from people wondering where I had gone. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I opened my tablet. I had a spreadsheet one. I had kept updated for over a year. It tracked every wedding expense, every deposit, every adjustment, every over-the-top upgrade that Emily elevated with a soft smile and a swipe of my card. I scrolled slowly. My finger hovered over the line items. Custom calligraphy invitations. Venue upgrade. Whiskey barrel decor. 5-tier cake. Specialty cocktails. Linen rentals. It was all there. Itemized. Labeled. Paid in full. By me. And then I saw 2 charges I hadn't made. Just days before the wedding. A rehearsal dinner upgrade. A bar tasting event. My stomach turned. I double-checked the card. My name. My number. My money. And there, beneath one of the Venmo transfers from Emily to her bridesmaid, a message: his mom is covering everything anyway. Might as well go big wedding vibes. Wedding vibes. Like I was an unlimited ATM. Like I wasn't even real. I didn't cry. Not this time. I didn't feel anything. Just stillness. A kind of stillness that only comes after you've been pushed too far for too long. It's funny. People think rage is loud, that it explodes and burns everything in its path. But sometimes rage is cold. Quiet. A knife placed carefully on the table. Not raised in the air. I turned on the lamp and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me didn't look angry. She looked awake. The sun hadn't risen yet when I closed the spreadsheet. I had memorized every transaction. Not out of obsession, but survival. When you're a single mother, every penny has to count. You learn to track every dime, every charge, every slip. And that morning, the lies weren't in the numbers. They were in the entitlement behind them. I poured myself a glass of water. It tasted flat, metallic. I left it half-finished on the nightstand and began packing. I didn't fold the dress. I just shoved it in the bag like something that no longer deserved care. I was home by 8:00 a.m. The house smelled stale, like dust and old linen, like a life that had been waiting too long to be rearranged. I didn't take off my coat. I walked straight to the bedroom. Opened the drawer on the left side of the dresser, bottom one. The one that always sticks, and pulled out a red file folder. It had been there for years. I didn't even remember what was in it anymore. Assurance documents. Old school records. Birth certificates. Maybe. Paper trails of a life lived without complaint. At the bottom was a letter. Yellowed at the edges. Sealed. The handwriting on the front stopped me cold. It was Michael's. My ex-husband. He died 7 years ago. Liver failure. I hadn't seen him for more than a decade before that. He left us when Daniel was barely 4. Walked out with a suitcase and a vague apology about needing to find himself. The letter had been in that drawer ever since I found it tucked into a box of his things that someone mailed to me after the funeral. I never opened it. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need one more half-hearted sorry. But now, I slid my finger beneath the flap. Inside was one sheet of paper. Lined. Folded once. The handwriting was familiar, slanted, impatient. Margaret. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I wouldn't blame you if you threw this away, but I'm writing because there's something you deserve to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Something I couldn't take to the grave. My throat tightened. Daniel, he's not biologically yours. Emily, my ex-girlfriend, before I met you, she got pregnant when she was 18. She left the baby with me and disappeared. I told you he was ours. I lied. You believed me. And you raised him. You gave him a better life than I ever could have. I'm sorry. I never told you because I was afraid you'd leave. But you didn't. You stayed. You loved him. You made him yours. And I've carried the guilt of that lie every day since. If you're reading this, thank you for being his mother when no one else could. Michael, I didn't move. The room was silent. But inside me, something roared. He wasn't mine. Not by blood. Not even by accident. He was the child of another woman, a child dropped off like a forgotten package. And I was the one who picked him up and held on like he was a piece of my soul. My knees gave out, and I sat slowly on the edge of the bed, letter in hand, breathing like I had just surfaced from underwater. I expected to feel heartbreak, but what came was something stranger. Relief. Because now it made sense. The distance, the disregard, the way Daniel looked through me like I was a relic. I thought I had failed. I thought I hadn't loved enough. But I had. I loved with every cell of a body that never carried him. I stayed up with fevers. I worked extra shifts. I kissed bruises and read bedtime stories and cheered at science fairs. I mothered him without biology, without truth, without recognition. And still, I did it better than anyone else could have. I stood up. Slowly. My hands didn't shake this time. I walked to the kitchen, placed the letter on the table, and let it sit there unhidden. Unashamed. A relic of truth. A tombstone for every lie I'd carried unknowingly. He was never mine. But I made him mine. And now, he no longer got to have me. The knock came just after noon. Not loud. Not rushed. Just steady. The kind of knock that says, I know you're home. And I'm not leaving until you answer. I stood in the hallway barefoot, watching his silhouette through the frosted glass. Daniel. 7 days since the wedding. 7 days of silence from me. And now, here he was. I opened the door. He looked smaller. Not physically. Just dimmer. Like the shine had worn off. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt and had bags under his eyes that no amount of lighting could hide. His mouth opened, then closed again like he had rehearsed 10 versions of this moment and forgot them all at once. "Hi. Mom," he said. I didn't say it back. I stepped aside, let him in. He hesitated, then walked past me into the living room. The air in the house was still, calm, clean. Sunlight spilled across the floorboards. And he noticed what wasn't there. The photos, every last one of him taken down. His eyes moved from one empty space on the wall to the next. "Where are the pictures I didn't answer?" "Sit," I said. He obeyed. We sat across from each other in silence. I let it stretch. Let it settle. Let him sit in the discomfort of it. Finally, he sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't come here to fight." I nodded. "Good. I don't understand what happened," he said. 1 minute. Everything was fine. Then you're canceling things. Posting pictures of the check on Facebook. Everyone's talking. That stung. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He wanted an explanation. A resolution. I stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out a box. Set it gently on the table between us. "What's this?" he asked. "Receipts," I said. "Every dollar I spent for your wedding. Every invoice. Every vendor. I even covered the extra dance floor you asked for." He stared at the box but didn't touch it. Then I placed something else beside it. The letter. His father's handwriting still visible. Unmistakable. "I found this," I said. "A week ago." His eyes scanned it. I watched the confusion melt into recognition. And then something else. Disbelief. Shame. Grief. "You knew," he whispered. "I do now," I replied. His voice cracked. "So you're mad because I'm not your real son?" I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "I'm mad because I raised you. I gave you everything I had. And when the moment came for you to honor me, to say, 'This woman made me,' you sat down. You let them humiliate me. And you said nothing. That's what broke me. Not DNA. Not money. Silence." He dropped his gaze. "I didn't think it would matter. Emily said it would be better for the aesthetic. For the pictures." I laughed quiet. "Clipped?" "Exactly. You didn't think?" I stood. Walked to the mantel. Picked up one of the now empty frames. "This used to hold your kindergarten graduation photo. You had a missing tooth and marker on your shirt. You ran off the stage straight into my arms." I set the frame down. "Face down. I'm done holding on to versions of you that no longer exist." He winced. "Mom, no." I said, firm, steady. "I'm not your backdrop anymore. I'm not your bank. I'm not your afterthought." His throat bobbed. He looked like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. I nodded. "Too little." "Too late." I handed him the box. "These are yours now," I said. "Every receipt. Every memory. Every reminder of what you chose to overlook." He took the box in his arms like it weighed more than paper and ink. Like it carried the truth of what he'd done. I walked him to the door. He paused at the threshold. "You always said I was your whole world." "You were," I replied. "And now, I'm finally mine." Then I closed the door. Not in anger. Not with drama. Just closed. For good. The house was full of laughter. Not polite giggles. Not staged smiles for family photos. This was real. The kind that bubbles from your chest and spills into the room like music. The kind that makes your eyes crinkle. That stops conversation mid-sentence because someone just choked on a sip of wine from laughing too hard. It echoed through the walls like the house had been holding its breath for years, and finally exhaled. The kitchen smelled like garlic and rosemary. There was lemon in the air, too. And a touch of heat from the oven warming the last dish. The blue sunflower tablecloth I had picked out from the farmer's market was slightly wrinkled. But I didn't care. It looked like summer. It looked like something I would have chosen when I was 20, before motherhood became my entire personality. I stood barefoot at the stove. Wine glass in one hand. Wooden spoon in the other. I wasn't hiding in the kitchen anymore. I was running it. Mr. Henderson was in the living room telling the story of how he once locked himself out of his house in nothing but boxers and a winter coat. Dana from the bookstore was doubled over, wiping tears from her face. Claire had just opened a second bottle of red and was pretending to read the label like a sommelier. And me, I was present. Not performing, not catering, not trying to prove my worth with dishes or favors or a smile that covered exhaustion. Just me. I plated the final dish roasted vegetables with thyme and sea salt, then carried it to the table where everyone had already gathered, chatting over half-finished plates and napkins tossed beside glasses. As I set it down, Claire clapped her hands and said, "Chef Margaret strikes again." I laughed. For real? Hardly. But I'll take it. Someone passed the salad. Someone else reached for bread. And in the quiet moment before seconds began, Claire raised her glass again. "I think we need a proper toast tonight," she said, eyes finding mine. To Margaret for choosing herself, for setting the table she deserved, and for showing the rest of us that it's never too late to stop being invisible. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt my throat tighten but not in pain. In gratitude, I stood up slowly. My voice was clear. My hands didn't shake. To the women who gave everything, I said, and were still told it wasn't enough. To the mothers who were asked to wait in the kitchen after building the whole damn house. And to the ones who finally stood up and said, "No more. May we never sit down again, unless it's at the head of our own table?" Glasses clinked. A few guests murmured, "Amen." And I sat not behind a curtain. Not in the back. But in the seat I had always earned. The next morning, I woke early to birdsong and sunlight spilling through the window. The house was still. The kitchen was quiet but smelled faintly of olive oil and red wine. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, opened the screen door, and stepped onto the porch. My robe fluttered in the breeze. The roses in the yard were blooming, wild and pink and unbothered. Just like me. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, face down. I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to. Daniel never called again, but I wasn't waiting for him anymore. The people who mattered were already here, around my table, in my life, in my laughter. That evening, I deleted the wedding folder from my computer. The spreadsheets, the receipts, the photos I had never been sent. Gone. I made dinner for one lemon pasta again. This time with extra garlic because I finally remembered I loved it that way. I lit a candle not to impress, not to soothe, but because I liked the way it made the silverware shine. And I ate slowly, peacefully, with music playing in the background. Billie Holiday. Soft and smoky. Not because someone was coming over, not because someone needed me, but because I was finally mine.